Greetings folks and welcome to another 8/16/32-bit. Today I'm going to be taking a look at the Interplay 3DO Buffet CD-ROM, which they described as a smorgasbord for the mind. Realistically speaking, it's a demo disc of stuff that Interplay were publishing for the 3DO, but you know, this was the 1990s where everything had to be a bit zany and a bit crazy and a bit whoa. So here's the Interplay 3DO Buffet. Okay, as you can see here, I've recorded this using the Project Phoenix emulator purely for ease of use. I tried to burn this to a CD, but I couldn't get a successful disc burnt this time. So anyway, here we are with the lovely FMV intro, because every CD-ROM game in the 1990s had to have some kind of pre-rendered full motion video intro, even if it didn't really add anything other than taking up space on the CD, because of course you had to justify putting the software onto a CD-ROM because they were much more expensive to produce at the time than they are these days. So there we go, it's the sexy Interplay logo. Oh yeah, carved into marble in outer space by a laser, because that's what you do. Anyway, we now get the little introduction here, the Interplay 3DO Buffet, or Buffet, a smorgasbord for the mind. Not quite sure who came up with that, but again, it's very 1990s. And here comes the incredibly 1990s menu. As you can see, we've got a selection of different options here. Each one of these is either a rolling or a playable demo of that particular title. We'll start off here with Waterworld with its wonderful little animations. It sort of sets itself up. Now, the Waterworld game was never released, so this is obviously some just rolling FMV footage of the game's backdrops. Now, looking at these backdrops and looking at the UI on the bottom, I'm not 100% sure, but I think that this was going to be a sort of a Corpse Killer Virtua Cop styled on-rail shooting gallery game. That's certainly what it seems to imply here. Now, it doesn't look too bad. You know, these are clearly pre-rendered backdrops done in the mid-1990s, and the standard looks pretty good. I'd say Interplay had obviously spent a fair amount of money on getting this title somewhat ready for release. Of course, as we know, it was never released. I think the only Waterworld game I can think of that was released was the Virtual Boy game. There may have been something else released, I'm not 100% sure, but you know, for such a huge film at the time, the amount of software released based around it was very, very tiny. But yeah, this is just a straightforward rolling selection of level backdrops from the game. There's nothing really here, there's nothing telling you what's going on, no voiceovers, no stories, just a huge amount of pre-rendered full motion video, which, like I said, looks like it would have been some kind of shooting gallery a la Corpse Killer or Virtua Cop. It could have been good. I mean, Demolition Man on the 3DO was pretty good with its use of backdrops and FMV characters, and Corpse Killer's entertaining of its own type. So it could have been a fun game, especially if you had a light gun. But alas, we shall never know. Waterworld. And here we go, back to the menu. You go through this every time it resets to the menu. It gets a little tiresome. Call 1-800-INTERPLAY. Wouldn't try it these days, I don't think, because I don't think you'd get anywhere with it. Here we go, back to the menu. We've got Out of This World, Kingdom of the Far Reaches, Siberia. Now, Out of This World is also known as Outer World in Japan, or Another World in Europe, which is technically its correct title. Here we go, a completely superfluous FMV intro, because as I said, it was CD-ROM, you had to have FMVs, preferably pre-rendered, to show how amazingly skilled your studio was at the time. And here we go, it's Out of This World. Now, after this pre-rendered sequence, we do cut to the more traditional vector animated sequence here, which I think was rotoscoped as well. As you can see, they've updated the backdrops to actually have some texturing and depth to them instead of just being flat colours like you would have gotten on, say, the Sega Mega Drive Genesis version, the SNES version, or the Amiga version. But, you know, we'll just skip this into the game, and you can see a bit more detail on the background, but it's very definitely another world. It looks good. This is a playable demo here, so I am actually in control. Just practicing the controls there, getting used to which button does which. Interestingly, this does seem to be an early beta version because certain behaviours aren't replicated from other versions. These little slugs you see here, there's ones on the ceiling that on the other versions will drop down behind, on top of you or behind you, whereas on this version they just keep crawling along the ceiling. Game looks pretty and it sounds quite nice as well. Obviously this is, you know, it looks pretty basic, but it is running and looking better than the 16-bit versions. Now, despite doing everything correctly here, I die. But it's okay, it's only the demo version, I'm just having a look at it. It gives you a password system on this one, and it just resets back to that first moment of the game, so out to the menu we drop. For some reason there was no option there, no spin up and no 1-800 Interplay screen. Now we're going to Kingdom the Far Reaches. Logic where we're behind this, their name pops up a couple of times on this disc. They seem to be a bit of a go-to house for 3DO development for Interplay. And here we are, yeah. Kingdom the Far Reaches, which I think may have been a retitling of an arcade game. I think Thea's Quest, I think it was. It's very Dragon's Lair-esque in what you have to do. You know, you have these FMV sequences and you have that limited sort of what we now call quick time event actions where you may have to press a direction or press one of the action buttons to engage the correct next clip. It looks okay, the quality of the FMV is pretty good. They've wisely kept it to a smaller than full screen window, which does allow it to be compressed but still maintain a visual quality that looks better than full screen. Sounds good, obviously it's stereo audio recorded to the video track. I'm not going to pretend to know what I'm doing on this because I've got no instructions to this whatsoever, and yeah, you know, you do get some choices here. You can pick where you want to go first, but you know, we go back out of this and here we are. Ooh, Siberia next. This one goes on a bit unfortunately because it's a lot of this is another lot of rolling footage on Siberia, as you can see. Pre-rendered CG, very mid-90s. Good for the time, obviously looks quite risible these days, but this was, you know, this was cutting edge in the mid-1990s, especially on CD-ROM, and this is how they chose to push CD-ROM. A lot of pre-rendered graphics, full motion video. This was seen as being the future of interactive entertainment. You've only got to look at what was going on platforms such as the PC, and you'd see titles popping up like the PC version of Night Trap, Myst, The Seventh Guest, Phantasmagoria. You know, FMV, real actors against either real or CG backdrops were seen to be a big thing, as well as a lot of this heavy CG animation. Yes, it's crude by today's standards, but this was the early days, and yeah, Siberia does look very, very crude at times, but you know, this is where the industry thought everything was headed. It looks pretty by the standards of the time. You know, this is far better looking than anything you got on, say, Sega's Mega CD platform. You know, it easily matched up to the multimedia PCs of the time, if not surpassed them in some respects in terms of its performance. But you know, it is what it is. It's lots of pre-rendered video, and ultimately a lot of these games, much as I love games that are based around full motion video, just didn't really work as something that people get into long term. Lots of video going on here. It's a fast cuts. It's very cyberpunk, obviously. Cyberpunk was cool then. Cyberpunk's cool now. In fact, cyberpunk has been cool since pretty much cyberpunk was invented. But I digress. Here we are in Siberia with its basic animation. I'm sure we've all seen plenty of PC games like this where things just look quite simplistic, but you know, this was an industry learning with titles like this, and there's a fascination from a historical standpoint to see this. Now we're about to get away from the pre-rendered movie sequences here into a little bit of pre-rendered gameplay footage. You'll notice once this starts up, we're very much in an original Alone in the Dark stroke Resident Evil style of fixed camera angles and what appears to be tank controls. This is a game that was released. It's one that's on my list of games that I am going to play at some point, but right now I'm done with tank control games for the minute. You know, I'm after something a bit more interesting to play on my 3DO, which is why I've been trying to pick up a few of the more platformy titles, such as trying to find a cheap copy of Johnny Bazooka Tone, but more on that another time. So yeah, we're into a very Resident Evil style here. Obviously everything here is pre-rendered rather than pre-rendered by drops and polygons. And hey, once again, that 3DO screen, let's just skip it. Now, where are we going to next? Ah yes, Alone in the Dark 2, a conversion from the PC, a title which was completely impossible on any other console at the time because of its reliance on, well, pre-rendered backdrops and polygon-based characters operating under tank controls. This conversion was done by Chrysalis, a British software house. Not the best reputation, Chrysalis software, it has to be said. Infogrames, who are still going to this day, I believe they're the current owners of Atari. And yeah, so here we go. This looks very, very close to the PC version with its hand-drawn backdrops and its polygonal characters which will be overlaid over the top of it. You'll see those in a moment. There's a bit of a graphics glitch there, which I'm putting down to this being a demo, and therefore this is what you would class as probably taken from a beta version of the game. But you know, it's flat shaded polygons for the most part, but well done. Yes, it's not the fastest, it's not the highest frame rate, but for the game, it suits the game. It suits the game's atmosphere and feel. Now, Alone in the Dark 2 did come out for the 3DO, as did Alone in the Dark. They were relatively successful, but really by the time they were out on the market, we were already seeing Resident Evil and seeing how this style of game had already been advanced beyond what was shown here. Even though what's shown here does look pretty nice, you know, given the constraints of the hardware and the source material, this is a bloody good looking game, really. And it is fun to play once you get used to the controls and the pacing of it. The Alone in the Dark titles are fun to play. Now, here we go, the game suddenly cuts to an action sequence taking place a little bit further in the game. I'm trying to work out the controls here, not very successfully, because yeah, I'm a bit rubbish, and it's a long time since I played one of these Alone in the Dark titles. And even then I played it on my PC with a keyboard and a mouse, so everything was a little bit different. Well yeah, the joys of tank controls. Sick to death, that buffet logo. Wolf 3D, a little demo of Wolf 3D, which is kind of apt because if people were introduced to Wolfenstein 3D through a demo on the 3DO, then it's how they were introduced to a Wolfenstein 3D on the PC, because the shareware version was basically a demo of the full game. Now I will say, this is a phenomenal game on the 3DO. It's smooth, it's responsive, you know, this this was, to my mind, the first platform specific 3D shooting FPS title that actually worked on a console. You compare this to the SNES version or any of the similar types of FPS games that came out for the 16-bit consoles, and this is leagues ahead of it. This is as good as the PC original. In fact, this actually runs better than the PC version ran on mine. But I'm getting off that quickly because we're all very familiar with Wolf 3D, or we should be. And the final title on this is Casper, based on the feature film with the same name, which came out around this time. And to be honest, this is just a bit of a rolling demo. It's like an FMV sequence and such. I have played this game, and it is one of the better games for the 3DO, even if it doesn't necessarily use the power of the system to its fullest extent, being a sort of a top-down action-adventure game where you play Casper. So I'm skipping that because it is basically just video footage, video footage, video footage. The ordering information, you click on that and you get the wonderful 3DO buffet 1-800 Interplay screen, and that's pretty much it. That's the smorgasbord for your mind that was the 3DO buffet. Now, it's not the best demo disc, but the 3DO was host to a few of these discs, and in their own way they're all quite enjoyable. But anyway, thanks for watching today. I've been Rob. If you like this video, hit the like button. If you want to see more videos, subscribe and ring the bell to be notified of any new upgrades. You can find me on Twitter, the link is in the description below, and I'll see you all next time.